Again, I'm Stephenie Carr, and I have been a trip leader with Royal Servants for many years, and now I oversee the alumni department. And I'm here talking with
Louie Inks. I am the founder of Rain Ministries, Royal Servant Center, and I'm chairman of the board. This all makes me very important.
that and many other things make you important, Louie. So today we're talking about Nehemiah, the team that, if some of you don't know what Nehemiah is, it's one of our alumni teams, and students that have been with us previously are invited back to this team. And I want to ask Louie a little bit about, Louie, what are the beginnings of Nehemiah? How did that even start?
Well, we were on World. We took a world trip. The last of the world trips was in 1994. We were in Beijing, China. I was up in my room. Students were gathering in the room, just talking about anything, everything. Conversation is going on. Most of the conversation was between them asking me questions and my responding. And one of them asked the question. His name was Kyle. He said, "What are you going to do when you get older?" And I said, that's a good question. Probably what I'll do is I won't lead a regular team. I will just take a group in a van, and we'll drive across Europe and do whatever comes naturally and just live, find opportunities to share Christ and see what happens. Because more teaching happens in life rather than sitting in a classroom doing it. And one of them said, "There's only one problem with that." So what's that? "We're going to be too old to be on that team." Well, it was getting late. I said, "Okay, you come up with a plan. You can stay here in the room for as long as you want. The only thing I ask you to do when you leave is turn the light off and close the door, because I can sleep anywhere in any position at any time. I'm going to slip into the bathroom, change into my BJs, and climb into bed." And okay, next morning they came with a plan. It was a good plan. So there were 4 people on the team. Well, you can't do it for the next year in 1995. 4 people doesn't quite cut it. So what we did at that point is I combined it with the regular Europe team, and we did special things on the side. That's how it all began. It came as a result of students saying, "We're going to be too old to do it with you."
Well, and trivia for those of you that are interested, the first team wasn't called Nehemiah team. It was
No,
called
it was called Dream Team. And that was the year that the U.S. basketball team won gold at the Olympics. And it became, in a couple of years, it was antiquated. And to say this is the dream team is not what we wanted to convey. Even though I was having them study the book of Nehemiah right from the beginning, it was natural to transition from that to Nehemiah, because a team is about leadership.
And so is Nehemiah. Yeah. So there's so many lessons that are learned about
Oh
leadership.
my goodness. Yes.
Well, and just to clarify, it wasn't Dream Team because the students on it were so amazing, although I'm sure they were, but it was called the Dream Team because it was Louie's dream to run this team. So, right? At least that's what you've always told me.
All right.
So as the Nehemiah team has evolved from that first year to even what it is today, what are some of the values that you see the Nehemiah team uniquely expresses?
Because our students have already had a year or more experiences behind them, taking them deeper into the walk with Christ. I like to call that soul life, to go where no man, no woman has ever gone, kind of the space age thing, because that is unlimited travel with God. Two, to give students the actual opportunity, because we don't have disciplers, leadership groups, and growth groups. So anytime a leadership group was in charge, they were planning the day, leading the team, etc. And then we'd critique them at night as leaders of the team, and to help them accomplish. Now, the only time we would step in, usually, if we thought there was some danger occurring, which was seldom. In fact, I don't ever remember when I was leading a team that there was really danger involved. The growth groups were to discuss what they learned during the day and to encourage one another.
The other staple part of Nehemiah has always been Israel. Since its beginnings, I think right at the beginning, that was always a component of it. And why was that important in your mind?
Scripture says to the Jew first and also to the Greek in Romans 1, verses 14 through 16. I personally have had also a love, but to understand Israel, you don't read about it. You got to walk its streets. Now that makes the Bible come alive too, as you're reading it. It's one thing to have it in a book, but once you start reading Scripture and you've been there, you can smell it, hear it, taste it. It makes Scripture a whole lot different when it comes to discipling students in their walk with Christ.
Hmm.
In the early years, we go to Israel, then we go back to the continent of Europe and go through three or four countries. Now we've changed things to usually have two sites rather than go to Israel and then some other location with them, so they can experience different cultures as opposed to just one.
So another bit of trivia, our Timothy team, which is for the last, I don't know when it started. I'd have to look it up. 2002, 2003, maybe. Anyway, it started because we had a team, and there was only 2 years that we weren't able to go to Israel, and that was because of some of the conflict that was happening within the country. And it was that team, the first time we weren't able to go to Israel, that we decided we wanted to come up with a way to not only spend time with that. Well, I'll let you tell your
Yeah. Well,
memory.
your impressions of it are different than mine. That particular team that year was so unusual. The uh, the interaction with them with one another and them with us. I just we dearly loved them, and we were trying to find a way. Okay, how can we spend another year with them? Well, we can invite them back to Israel, but we'd be going through the same content with them. So I said to Stephenie, sleep on that. Come up with a plan tomorrow. And she did.
I didn't do much sleeping that night, actually. It was really fun to plan. It was really fun. So another piece of trivia for you is the
Yeah.
beginning of Timothy. So Louis, the other thing that when I think about Nehemiah, I think about my experience as a student on Nehemiah, and then growing into leadership of Nehemiah, and then the many, many students that have come. Um, One of the taglines that just rings so true is that summer of service for a lifetime of ministry. Will you talk about that? Maybe if you remember how it came to be, or what does that phrase mean, and how do you see that?
I don't want the summer to be about the summer. I don't want it to be a point of time and where people look back on, but they really stop there. I want them to go through the summer asking themselves the question, how am I going to use this in my future life for the rest of my life? So it becomes a summer of service to the King of Kings, service to the other members of the team, and service to those that we come in contact with, to live before them the Christ centered life, as well as opening our mouths and sharing our faith with them when they give us the opportunity. A summer of service for a lifetime of ministry. To take what they have, I just was just reading an email I got yesterday of a student that went about 25 years ago, say that every day there's something that comes to their mind as a result of the experience that they had that they get to turn around and use. back in the 80s, there was a kid that came on Royal Servants. In fact, he came 2 years in a row. I'd spoken to him on a retreat and invited him to come. He was not able to come, and I didn't know the reason why, because he was in juvenile detention, because he was in trouble. But the next year, I was up in the same area speaking in a different church at a rally of a group of churches, and he happened to be there. And when I saw him, I encountered him. I said, "This is a divine appointment. Why would I see you 2 years in a row? This is meant for you." And he did come. And God impacted his life. Well, after that second year, he went into the army. I lost contact with him. 20 years plus went by, and I got an email from him saying, "Every week, I share my faith with someone as a result of the training that you gave me and the influence or the impact that you had on my life. But I've never told you about that." So I picked up the phone and called him. And it has been a sweet relationship that we've had ever since. Now he has 3 children. Those 3 children have come on Royal Servants. One of them has been in leadership. Um, Once on the Nehemiah team as well. But anyway, those kinds of stories to look back on a summer of service for a lifetime of ministry. You see, people ask me, how did the summer go once we get back? And I really don't know how to answer that, because what I want to do, I'm sure, because they write all kinds of nice things to you at the end of the summer when we're doing the debriefing. In fact, one of those I laid out for my wife, Sandy, to read, and it laid on the table for quite a few days. And I picked it up and threw it away. And she came home and she said, where's that letter? Because it was a page that numerous students had written on. And I said, I tossed it. Did you read it? She said, yes. I tossed it. She was instantly angry at me. You don't throw those kinds of things away. You will save them. And I got to thinking, why doesn't that impact me or make me feel good about those things? And I remember saying to her, it's interesting that you think that's pretty good. But what I'm more interested in is not what they say at the end of the summer, but what they say after 5 years, 10 years. Where are they in their walk with Christ? And has it been a summer of service for a lifetime of ministry?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I know in my life, gosh, the gifts that I've received from Nehemiah have been just that the leadership training has been huge. And not because, like, I mean, whatever curriculum or teaching you shared with us was obviously amazing, but the modeling of it and being invited into not just, I think you taught me a lot about that leadership is actually how to see things and how to notice things. And that was a huge gift that I could take into any context. It didn't matter if it was overseas or if it was in a youth group setting or if it was in a classroom or if it was even with my own children now. Just
Hmm.
that ability to pay attention and to see the dynamics and to pay attention and to recognize that there's things that I can do to help make those better. And that's actually leadership there. And yeah, just the safety net that if I was leading and I made a mistake, I had that there and I could practice without fear of like huge devastating effects. That was a huge gift too. So I think that one of the things that we want our Nehemiah students to remember is that ministry, especially as we use it in that phrase, is not just vocational ministry, but it's this wide
No.
context of life and these moments that God calls us into to bring his presence and his shalom into these places. And so even though my story turned into like, I literally stepped into the same ministry that had been modeled for me and as a leader in Nehemiah and with Rain Ministries, but it's so much broader than that for any of our other students. We see it working out in as teachers and as law enforcement or as business owners, or I mean, any kind of vocation in life is a ministry calling when you look at it with those eyes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you threw that piece of paper away, was that the first time someone was mad at you for throwing something away, Louie?
No, I throw lots of things away.
uh, any other things that you feel like would be important for somebody who has no context of Nehemiah to know?
What does it mean to be a leader? Leadership is influence. You can be an influence. So when we talk about Nehemiah being leadership, this is not necessarily that you're going to be the president of, or the chairman of, or teach the Sunday school class, etc. It means that you're going to influence others with a life well lived.
Yeah. I've seen that just be an mind-blowing realization for students, especially some of our quiet students that don't like being up front and telling people what to do. And their vision of leadership has been maybe one model of that. And yet when they get to blossom out of that in their own sense of influence and leadership, in their own way and own style, yeah, that's been huge.
Well, one time the three of you gals were in leadership together with me. One of those, her name was Laura, was the quiet one. She took care of the finances, but as we watched, she had deeper relationships with students than the three of us had. How does that all take place? It wasn't about necessarily personality or being out there. It was a quiet reassurance. Some kids didn't want to talk to us, they wanted to talk to her. It was a real balance, and it was a sweet, sweet leadership style that we had together.
Yeah, it really was.